The secret to avoiding running injuries is more simple than you might think. When runners get injured, they'll usually jump to blaming things like their shoes or their technique, tight muscles, weak core, you name it. Sometimes these things are important, however, one thing is always important: adaptation. Every tissue in the body is alive: muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones. Running places mechanical stress on these tissues. If you place too much stress on one of these tissues, it'll become painful and eventually damaged. However, the flip side that people often forget is that if you place too little stress on these tissues, they'll actually become weaker. We see this in our elderly relatives. Without regular exercise, their muscles become weak, their bones become brittle, and their joints wear down. We want to place stresses on the body's tissues that are not too high and not too low. Too high causes injury. Too low causes weakening. Just right causes strengthening. The secret to avoiding running injuries is adaptation. Hi guys, welcome back to the Adaptive Zone podcast. My name is Matthew Boyd. I'm a physiotherapist and running coach. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe, and if you're so inclined, share it with a friend. Today, we're going to be learning the secret to avoiding running injuries. All of the body's tissues are capable of adaptation. We're very familiar with this concept when it comes to muscles. If you go to the gym and lift heavy weights, your muscles will become bigger and stronger. Said another way, if you go to the gym and stress your muscles, they'll adapt and become better able to lift heavy weights. But it's not just muscles. All of the tissues in the body are alive. Muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones, joint cartilage, all of it. They're all alive and they all adapt to mechanical stress. In order to help us illustrate why this concept is so critical for runners to understand, let's look at a tissue that we don't normally think of as being able to adapt: joint cartilage. The joint cartilage on the back of the kneecap has become such a common source of pain for runners that pain in this region has actually become known as runner's knee. In the medical community, they call this condition patellofemoral pain. So why do runners get runner's knee? Although academic libraries are filled with research on this topic, the crux of it is actually very simple. If the stresses placed on the cartilage on the back of the kneecap are higher than it is able to tolerate, then it'll become painful. However, the flip side of this coin is that if the stresses placed on the cartilage on the back of the kneecap are less than is required to maintain its current state of toughness, it'll actually become weaker. If the stresses placed on the back of the kneecap are not too high and not too low, then it'll adapt and become stronger. The stresses need to be just right, like baby bear's porridge. Those people who avoid running because it's bad for their knees are not doing their knee joint cartilage any favors. Just as our muscles need stress to become stronger, the cartilage in our knee joints requires stress in order to adapt and become more resilient. Removing the stresses placed on the joint cartilage of the knee by avoiding running only serves to weaken our knees in the long term. Granted, your knees will stop hurting if you stop running. However, that's like putting your arm in a sling because your shoulder hurts. Yes, the shoulder pain will go away, but now you don't have a functional arm. So how do we use this secret to avoid running injuries? To help us understand this secret, we're going to take an example of a runner with knee pain coming from the cartilage on the back of the kneecap. We're going to call him Dave. Dave has a couple of lazy months over the holiday period and he doesn't run much. Since Dave isn't running much over the holidays, he's not putting much stress on the back of the kneecap. The cartilage on the back of the kneecap, therefore, is not being asked to adapt to that stress and thus becomes weaker. The body isn't going to waste energy making tissues stronger that don't seem to need it. So while Dave enjoys a couple of lazy weeks over the holidays, his kneecap's getting weak. When New Year rolls around, Dave remembers that he's booked a marathon for the spring, so he heads straight out for a 20k run, and his knee starts to hurt. Dave's knee started to hurt because that 20k run placed more stress on the cartilage on the back of the kneecap than it was able to tolerate. Dave rests it for a few days and then he heads in to see his physio, a handsome young gentleman named Matthew. Dave's physio, Matthew, asks a few questions and then makes the rather brilliant insight that perhaps the 20k run after a few weeks off was the reason that his knee started to hurt. Matt explains to Dave that he needs to stress the cartilage on the back of the kneecap, not too much, but not too little. Since running is the primary way that Dave is stressing the cartilage on the back of his kneecap, he shouldn't avoid running altogether, as that will just allow the cartilage to get weaker. That's what got him into this mess in the first place. However, Dave's knee hurts when he runs, so The question is it okay to run through pain? This is the most common question I get from runners. And like all good questions, it requires a somewhat nuanced answer. In order to decide if you can continue running if something's hurting, I like to use a pain traffic light system. The idea here is that a tissue will let you know if it's under too much stress. If you're running along and you feel a little pain that's not really bothering you, you can think of that as green light pain. We're talking like a 0 to 3 on a 1 to 10 pain scale, and just like the traffic lights, green light pain means keep going. If you're experiencing severe pain as you run, say 6 to 10 on a pain scale, then you're placing more stress on the injured area than it can tolerate. In this case, just like the traffic lights, red light pain means stop. So what if the pain isn't exactly just a tiny bit, but it's not really severe either? Well, we call that orange light pain. Orange light pain hurts, but it's not that bad. It's not getting any worse as you go, and it's uncomfortable, but it's tolerable. When you stop, the pain fades away within about 20 minutes. It's not worse later that day or the following morning. Each time you run, it's no worse than it was the previous run. We're talking about a 4 or a 5 on a 10-point pain scale. Just like with the traffic lights, orange light pain means proceed with caution. You probably aren't going to run any further or any faster, but what you're doing at the minute is okay. If you do the same run a few times and get orange light pain each time, you can try going a little further or a little faster, but not both. So back to Matthew and Dave. Matthew explains to Dave that he does not need to rest from running. In fact, complete rest from running would actually be counterproductive, as it would just allow further weakening of the kneecap. Instead, Dave needs to find the right amount of running to put stress on his kneecap that will cause it to adapt and become stronger. Over the next few weeks, Matt has Dave run 4 times a week, and he teaches him to listen to his knee. He's allowed to keep running if the knee is hurting, as long as the pain is not getting any worse and doesn't feel worse afterwards or the following morning, aka orange light pain. Matthew also has Dave walk for 30 seconds each kilometer, so whenever his GPS watch beeps at him, Dave has to walk for a count of 30. In this way, Dave is learning to find the amount of running that places a stress on the cartilage on the back of his kneecap that isn't so much that it causes further irritation, but it isn't so little that it's causing it to become weaker. I call this the adaptive zone. The adaptive zone is not too much stress and not too little, just like baby bear's porridge. As Dave gets back to running 4 times a week, he takes those 30-second walk breaks every kilometer. This prevents the stress on the back of the kneecap from building up and allows Dave to stay within the adaptive zone. With the repeated stresses of running within the adaptive zone, the cartilage on the back of the kneecap begins to adapt to the stresses placed upon it. In this way, it becomes stronger and more resilient. The adaptive zone starts to move up as the cartilage adapts to those stresses. In fact, the kneecap has become so strong and resilient that it can actually tolerate stresses that are higher than the stress that caused the original problem. After a few more weeks, Dave heads out for a 30k run and feels no knee pain at all. Thanks to Dave continuing to run within the adaptive zone, he's able to run the marathon in the spring without any knee pain. To sum up, all of the tissues in the body are alive. Muscles, tendons, ligaments, bones, joint cartilage, connective tissues, all of it. When we do activities like running, we place mechanical stress on the tissues of our body. These tissues will adapt to that stress as long as the stress is not too much and not too little, like baby bear's porridge. Mechanical stress that is not too much and not too little is within the adaptive zone. When you regularly stress your tissues within the adaptive zone, they'll become stronger and more resilient over time. In the future, you'll be able to place more mechanical stress on these tissues. For runners, this means that you can run more and more over time, provided that you keep your training stress within the adaptive zone. So the secret to avoiding running injuries is to keep your training stress within that adaptive zone. And the pain traffic light system is one of the best ways that you can help make sure you do that. Thanks for watching, guys. That video was part of my Running Fundamentals course, which is a free online course, and you can check out the next video in the series right here. You can also sign up to receive the entire course delivered to your inbox. Just click the link in the description.